It started as a typical night in our quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knows your lawn height, your recycling habits, and, unfortunately, your business. Most nights, it was the chirping of crickets and the occasional distant bark from someone else's dog that accompanied my sleep. But this night, at precisely 3:04 a.m., peace shattered like glass under a steel boot. The sound was unmistakable, a loud, insistent pounding at my front door. Not a knock. Not even a bang. It was a kick, the kind that makes your whole frame rattle and your pulse jump. I shot up from bed, heart racing, disoriented but instantly alert. My dogs, Bear and Luna, were already in defense mode, snarling and barking like they'd just heard the end of the world approaching. Still groggy, I grabbed a hoodie and quietly slipped into the hallway, motioning to the dogs to stay back as I approached the door. But their instincts were faster than my commands. Bear, a 120-pound German Shepherd, stood like a sentinel beside the door, hackles raised. Luna, my leaner but equally fierce Belgian Malinois, paced in tight circles behind him, her ears perked and growls low and constant. Another kick. Then a jiggling of the doorknob. And that's when I heard the voice. I have a key. This is HOA business. Let me in. The shrill, unmistakable voice of Karen, yes, that Karen, pierced through the night. Now, you have to understand, Karen isn't just any neighbor. She's the self-appointed queen of our homeowners association, the kind who treats the monthly newsletter like royal decree. She's issued fines for everything from trash cans being visible 5 minutes too early to grass growing half an inch too high. But this was a new level. I flicked on the porch light and peered through the peephole. There she was, in full nightmare regalia, bathrobe, hair curlers, and a manila folder tucked under one arm like a police warrant. In her other hand was a set of keys, which she was trying, and failing, to jam into my front door lock. Still inside, I unlocked the deadbolt but left the chain on, cracking the door open just enough to speak without giving Bear the opportunity to bolt. Karen, I said, keeping my voice low, it's 3 in the morning. What the hell are you doing? She stepped back just enough to meet my eye. I have a master key, she said indignantly. I need to perform an inspection. There's been a complaint. A complaint, I repeated. At 3 a.m. About what? Unregistered modifications to your property, she said, holding up the folder as if it were a search warrant. You added lights to your backyard fence without approval. My jaw nearly hit the floor. You kicked my door over garden lights. Are you serious right now? Karen didn't flinch. She looked genuinely affronted, like I was the one being unreasonable. It's a violation, she insisted. And I have every right to enter as an HOA officer. No, you don't, I said flatly. Not without permission, not without notice, and definitely not at 3 in the damn morning. Behind me, Bear let out a deep, guttural bark. The kind that vibrates through walls. Karen's eyes darted to the shadow behind me, and I saw the first flicker of uncertainty on her face. Control your animals, she snapped. You're lucky they're trained, I said, unclipping the chain but keeping my foot behind the door. If they weren't, you'd be picking pieces of yourself out of the azaleas right now. I'm going to report this, she threatened, but her voice had lost its edge. You're being aggressive. I'm asleep in my own home, I snapped back. You're the one trying to force entry. I stepped outside, phone in hand now, and started recording. Karen backed up another few feet, clearly not expecting to be on camera in her fluffy slippers and bathrobe. I kept my voice steady, calm, and loud enough to wake a few neighbors. This is Karen, the HOA president, attempting to force entry into my home at 3 a.m. using a key that does not belong to her. She tried to say something, probably a protest about privacy or how she didn't consent to being recorded, but I cut her off. I've already called the police, I lied. They're on their way. Hope you've got a good explanation for this. That did it. She turned on her heel and stormed off down the walkway, muttering something about disrespectful homeowners and legal authority, but she was gone within moments. I waited until she was off the property before turning back inside. The dogs were still on edge, sniffing the door and pacing in circles. I knelt down and scratched behind their ears, whispering thanks. Bear leaned into my touch, still wary but calming. Luna gave a small huff and sat at attention, still listening for further intruders. Back in the living room, I slumped onto the couch, phone still in hand. No real damage done, but the sheer audacity of that woman had my adrenaline pumping like I'd just run a marathon. The idea that she thought she could just let herself in, let alone at that hour, was beyond infuriating. I reviewed the footage I had taken. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I knew I'd be taking it to the next HOA meeting. Hell, I'd forward it to every neighbor on the block if I had to. This wasn't going to slide. But what stuck with me most, more than the anger or the absurdity of it all, was the thought, what if my dogs hadn't been there? What if I hadn't woken up in time? What would she have done if she had managed to get inside? Because people like Karen don't stop at one crossed line. They live on the edge of entitlement, thinking the rules they enforce don't apply to them. And that night, at 3 a.m., she learned the hard way. My house isn't just a line in her rulebook, it's where the line gets drawn. She was back again, right at 3 a.m., like clockwork. I had just barely drifted off after a long day, when the sharp clank of metal against my front door jolted me upright. I knew that sound. It was her again, Karen from the HOA. Only this time, there was no polite knock, no muffled voice trying to be civil. This was a straight-up kick. The kind that echoed through the hallway and rattled the door in its frame. I sat up instantly, heart pounding. My two German shepherds, Luna and Rex, were already at the door, teeth bared, low growls rumbling from their chests. They knew the sound too. They'd heard it before. And they weren't having it. I reached for my phone, checking the time. 3:02 a.m. This woman had no sense of boundaries, or sanity, apparently. I stepped out into the hallway cautiously, calling the dogs off just enough so they wouldn't break through the door. They were trained, but even the best training thins under repeated provocation. And Karen. She was always pushing it. I could hear her muttering outside, fumbling with keys. Her so-called master key. This wasn't the first time she'd tried to get in using some ancient authority she believed the HOA granted her. The fact that she even had a key, or claimed to, was disturbing enough. But when it didn't work, which it never did, she always lost it. That's when the kicking started. I turned on the security camera feed and watched the scene unfold on my phone. Karen, in her bathrobe and slippers, hair disheveled, was jamming a key into my lock and twisting it like it owed her money. When it didn't turn, she stepped back, took a breath, and kicked the door again. "This is an HOA emergency," she barked. "You're violating the bylaws." I blinked. An emergency? At 3 a.m. What? Was my porch light too bright? Were my garbage bins angled at a 45-degree instead of 90-degree angle? Luna barked again, this time sharp and piercing. Karen jumped back with a yelp. "I hear your dogs," she shrieked. "Those animals are aggressive. I'm reporting you." I stared at the screen in disbelief. She had come to my house, at 3 in the damn morning, kicked my door, and now she was calling me a threat. I was still standing there half in pajamas. This couldn't be real. I pulled open the door just enough to look out, chain still latched, of course. The dogs flanked me, still growling, tails stiff, eyes locked on her. "What the hell are you doing, Karen?" I asked, voice low and cold. Karen looked utterly affronted, as if she were the one being harassed. "You were supposed to remove those patio string lights by yesterday. They're not in compliance with the aesthetic guidelines." I blinked slowly. "Are you serious right now?" "The board voted. You were notified," she shouted. I had received no such notification, of course. I hadn't gotten anything but passive-aggressive newsletters and random printouts stuffed in my mailbox, none of which mentioned lights. And none of which justified a 3 a.m. house call. "Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "it's 3 in the morning. You are trespassing. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the cops. Her face twisted in righteous fury. I am the HOA. I have the right to enforce bylaws. I glanced at my phone, still recording everything. No, you don't. Not like this. And I've got you on camera trying to break in, again. You think those stupid dogs will save you from legal action? She spat, pointing at Luna, who had begun barking again, pacing between me and the door. They're not here to save me from legal action, I said. They're here to save me from maniacs who show up at 3 a.m. and kick my door. That seemed to land. Her face paled just slightly, and she took a small step back. Still indignant, but less sure of herself now. This is harassment, I added. And if you don't leave right now, I will make sure you never set foot on this porch again. There was a long pause. She looked at the dogs again. Then at the camera above the door. Then back at me. I'll be talking to the board, she hissed. Good, I said. So will I. And I'll be showing them this video. With a final sneer, she turned and stormed off down the walkway, mumbling about bylaws and respect and how this used to be a decent neighborhood. I shut the door slowly, heart still racing, adrenaline burning through my veins. The dogs settled after a few minutes, still alert but no longer ready to lunge. I gave each of them a treat, scratched behind their ears, and whispered a quiet, "Good job," to both of them. If it weren't for them, I might have opened that door unprepared. And who knows what Karen might have tried then. The next morning, I sent the footage to the HOA board. Not just the incident, but every attempt she'd made in the past 6 months to enforce her personal version of the rules. I compiled timestamps, emails, doorbell footage, and even audio from a past encounter where she threatened to have my dogs taken away if I didn't comply with her complaints. By the end of the day, I had half the neighborhood calling me. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she had targeted. One neighbor said she had tried to peer into their backyard through a crack in the fence. Another said she came by during dinner once to accuse them of having illegal herbs in their garden. Someone else claimed she tried to fine them for not trimming their lawn to precisely 2.5 inches. It became clear this wasn't about HOA rules. This was about control. And she had crossed the line for the last time. A week later, a special HOA meeting was held. Karen didn't show up. Word was she'd been asked to step down from her self-appointed enforcement role. Apparently, she had never been officially assigned to any oversight position. She'd just assumed the title, and no one challenged her, until now. The board issued a formal apology for the incident and assured the neighborhood that her keys were being collected. No more unauthorized access. No more 3 a.m. emergencies. That night, I turned on the string lights. Luna and Rex laid by the door, calm and satisfied. And for the first time in weeks, the neighborhood was quiet. Almost too quiet. But this time, it wasn't because of fear. It was because the one person causing chaos had finally been held accountable. And if she ever dared come back, let's just say my K9s were ready.